Madeline Carter stood in front of the mirror, smoothing out the creases in her navy blue blouse. She turned slightly, admiring the way the fabric hugged her curves. Some might call her big boned, but she preferred the term perfectly proportioned. Confidence radiated from her as she adjusted the small silver earrings her mother had gifted her for graduation. Today was a big day, her chance to finally break free from the small-town struggles that had held her family back for years. Outside her bedroom door, the familiar scent of cinnamon and fresh coffee wafted through the air. She could hear the faint chatter of her siblings, Dylan and Sophie, bickering over something trivial as their mother, Eleanor, called them to breakfast. A small smile played on her lips. She would miss this, the warmth of home, the easy routine. But she had no choice. Their family needed more than love to survive. Madeline, breakfast is getting cold, and you know how your dad feels about wasting food. Sophie's voice echoed from the hallway. Rolling her eyes but unable to hide her amusement, Madeline grabbed her purse and stepped out of her room. She was immediately met by her younger sister's playful smirk. "Let me guess," Sophie teased, crossing her arms. "You were talking to yourself in the mirror again. Hyping yourself up for the big city?" "And what if I was?" Madeline countered, arching a brow. "You jealous?" "Hardly. I was just making sure you hadn't chickened out." "Never," Madeline said firmly, though a small part of her wished she shared her sister's unwavering certainty. As she made her way to the kitchen, the sight of her family gathered around the modest wooden table filled her with bittersweet warmth. Her father, Henry, sat at the head of the table, his reading glasses perched low on his nose as he skimmed the morning newspaper. Her mother moved gracefully between the stove and table, refilling coffee cups and fussing over their plates. "You're up early and looking sharp," Eleanor noted with approval, placing a heaping plate of scrambled eggs and toast in front of Madeline. "You sure you have everything for the trip?" Madeline nodded as she slid into her seat. "Yep. My bags are packed, my resume is printed, and my nerves are somewhat under control." Her father set down his newspaper and regarded her with a thoughtful gaze. "Are you really sure about this, sweetheart? Moving across the country for a job that isn't even guaranteed yet. The hotel here may not pay much, but it's safe." "I know, Dad," Madeline said gently, reaching across the table to squeeze his hand. "But staying here means watching us scrape by, barely making ends meet. Next year, Dylan and Sophie will be starting college. We can't afford tuition on hope alone." "I can take out loans," Dylan chimed in. "Or get a part-time job," Sophie added. Madeline shook her head. "No. You two focus on school. That's the whole point of this. I want you to have opportunities that I never had. And maybe, if this works out, I can even help buy that piece of land Dad's been dreaming about." Her parents exchanged a look, one filled with love, worry, and reluctant acceptance. "You always put everyone else first," Eleanor murmured, brushing a stray curl from Adeline's face. "Just don't forget to take care of yourself, too." "My dream is to take care of all of us, Mom," Madeline said earnestly. A heavy silence settled over the room, thick with unspoken emotions. It was Sophie who broke it first. "Okay, enough, or we're all going to start crying," she said dramatically. "And I, for one, refuse to send my sister off looking like a puffy-eyed mess." Laughter rippled around the table, lightening the mood. Even Henry cracked a rare smile. After breakfast, Madeline took one last look at the house she had called home for her entire life. It wasn't much. Peeling paint on the porch, the old creaky swing her dad had built, the small but lovingly maintained garden her mom had tended for years. But it was theirs. A lump formed in her throat, but she swallowed it down. This was not goodbye forever. Taking a deep breath, she hugged each member of her family one last time before picking up her suitcase. "Well, she said, forcing a smile. Los Angeles, here I come. The moment Madeline Carter stepped out of the airport, the air in Los Angeles felt different. Warmer, faster, alive with an energy that was both thrilling and intimidating. The towering skyline, the endless flow of traffic, and the sheer volume of people moving with purpose made her small-town roots feel a world away. She clutched her suitcase a little tighter, reminding herself that this was exactly what she wanted. No second guessing now. She had come too far to turn back. Her ride from the airport led her straight to the Donovan Grand Hotel, where she was scheduled for her final interview. The sight of the grand building nearly took her breath away. It wasn't just luxurious, it was something out of a dream. Marble floors gleamed under dazzling chandeliers, and the air carried a faint scent of vanilla and expensive cologne. The staff moved with an effortless elegance, their uniforms pristine, their expressions professional. Madeline adjusted her blazer and stepped forward, her heels clicking against the polished floor as she approached the front desk. A well-groomed receptionist, with a perfectly practiced smile, greeted her. "Welcome to the Donovan Grand. How may I assist you?" "Hi, I have an interview scheduled with the hiring manager," Madeline replied, keeping her voice steady despite the nervous energy buzzing through her. "Of course, Miss Carter. One moment." As she waited, Madeline glanced around, taking in the sheer opulence of the hotel. This wasn't just any establishment. This was a place where people with money and power stayed. A place where she was about to work. If everything went well, the thought sent a thrill through her. Moments later, a sharply dressed woman in her 40s approached. "Madeline Carter?" "Yes, ma'am." "I'm Elaine Foster, head of her. Follow me." Madeline trailed behind the woman, her heart hammering. The next 30 minutes would decide her future. The interview took place in a sleek, modern office with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city. Elaine wasted no time diving into questions about Madeline's experience, her ability to handle high-pressure environments, and why she wanted to work at the Donovan Grand. Madeline answered each question with confidence, drawing from her years of customer service experience, her quick problem-solving skills, and her unwavering work ethic. Elaine leaned back in her chair, scanning Madeline's resume one final time before nodding. "You have an impressive background, and your references speak highly of you. We'll start you as a guest relations associate. It's demanding, but I have a feeling you can handle it." Madeline nearly exhaled in relief but kept her composure. "Thank you." "Welcome to the Donovan Grand," Elaine said, standing to shake her hand. As soon as Madeline stepped out of the office, the realization hit her. She had done it. She was officially employed at one of the most prestigious hotels in Los Angeles. The excitement carried her through the rest of the day as she moved into a shared apartment she had arranged with 3 other young women working in hospitality. Olivia, Jasmine, and Riley were not only welcoming but hilarious, instantly making her feel at home. They bonded over takeout pizza, sharing stories of their experiences in the industry and warning Madeline about the hotel's toughest guests. That night, as she lay in bed, exhaustion tugging at her, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Sophie. "Did you get the job?" Madeline smiled, typing back. "I did. First day tomorrow. Scared but excited." "I knew you'd get it. We're so proud of you," Mom cried. Dad pretended not to. Madeline laughed softly, picturing her father's failed attempt at hiding his emotions. "Miss you guys." "Miss you too. Go kick some ass, Mads." With that, she placed her phone on the nightstand, staring at the ceiling. Tomorrow would be the first step into an entirely new world. A world where she would prove she belonged. The first day at Donovan Grand Hotel was a whirlwind. The moment Madeline stepped onto the marble floors in her crisp new uniform, She felt the weight of expectations settle onto her shoulders. This wasn't a small-town hotel where guests were happy with a warm smile and a clean room. This was a place where the elite came to be pampered, where a single misstep could mean a scathing review that would ripple through the ranks like a death sentence. But Madeline had never backed down from a challenge. She had worked too hard to get here, and she wasn't about to let nerves ruin her shot. Her supervisor, a tall, no-nonsense woman named Meredith, wasted no time showing her the ropes. The Donovan Grand doesn't just provide luxury, Madeline. We are luxury. That means precision, grace, and absolute professionalism. Our guests expect perfection, and it's our job to deliver it. Madeline nodded, absorbing every word. She was assigned to guest relations, meaning she'd be the first point of contact for any high-profile guest needing assistance. Whether it was arranging last-minute dinner reservations, solving complaints before they escalated, or ensuring VIP guests received their personalized welcome gifts, she had to be quick, efficient, and above all, discreet. By noon, she had already dealt with a demanding businessman who refused to accept a suite without a south-facing window, a celebrity assistant frantically trying to find her boss' lost designer handbag, and an older couple who insisted on speaking to the manager because their wine wasn't chilled, to the exact degree they preferred. Through it all, Madeline kept her composure, resolving each issue with a patient smile. "She's a natural," Olivia whispered to Jasmine as they passed by the front desk. Jasmine smirked. "Give it a week. Either she'll own this place, or she'll be crying in the employee lounge." Madeline heard them and shot a playful glare in their direction. "I don't break that easily." "We'll see about that," Jasmine teased. "You haven't met him yet." Madeline frowned. "Him who?" Before Jasmine could answer, a heavy silence fell over the lobby. The air shifted. Staff members straightened their posture. Guests turned their heads. The very energy of the hotel seemed to still, as if something, or someone had just walked in that commanded absolute attention. A deep, measured voice cut through the quiet. "Make sure my meeting with the investors isn't moved again. I don't appreciate last-minute changes." Madeline turned, and for the first time, she saw him. Liam Donovan, the owner of the Donovan Grand, the man who built this empire from the ground up. And he was, without question, the most striking man she had ever seen. Tall, with a presence that dominated the space, Liam moved with the kind of confidence that wasn't learned but ingrained. His tailored suit fit him like a second skin, the sharp lines emphasizing his lean, powerful frame. His dark hair was neatly styled, not a strand out of place, and his chiseled jawline was set in a way that suggested he rarely, if ever, smiled. But it was his eyes that stopped Madeline in her tracks. Piercing, an icy shade of blue that held an intensity sharp enough to cut through glass. He wasn't just powerful. He was dangerous. "God, he's even hotter up close," Olivia muttered under her breath. Jasmine nudged her.
"Shut! He can probably hear you."
Madeline, however, was still frozen in place, because at that exact moment, those intense blue eyes locked onto hers. Her stomach twisted, not in fear, but something else. Something unfamiliar and unsettling. Liam's gaze was unreadable, assessing her for a moment too long before shifting away, as if deciding she wasn't worth another second of his time. "Back to work, ladies," Meredith whispered sharply. Madeline tore her eyes away, inhaling deeply as she refocused on her duties. She didn't know what it was about Liam Donovan that sent a shiver down her spine, but one thing was certain. She had just stepped into a world far more dangerous than she ever expected. Madeline had faced difficult guests before. She had handled entitled businessmen, impatient socialites, and demanding VIPs without breaking a sweat. But there was something about Liam Donovan that unsettled her in a way she couldn't quite explain. Maybe it was the way the air seemed to shift when he entered a room, like gravity itself bowed to him. Or maybe it was the way his piercing blue eyes had flicked over her, as if he could see straight through her. She shook off the thought, reminding herself that he was just another rich man who expected the world to move at his command. She wasn't here to be intimidated by powerful men. She was here to build a future. The day passed in a blur of check-ins, guest complaints, and last-minute reservations. By the time her shift ended, her feet ached and exhaustion clung to her shoulders like a heavy coat. Olivia, Jasmine, and Riley had already clocked out. So Madeline made her way to the staff lounge alone, eager to sit down for just 5 minutes before heading home. She had just sunk into a chair when the doors swung open, and Meredith, her supervisor, poked her head inside. "Carter, you're needed at the rooftop lounge. Now." Madeline blinked. "My shift just ended." "Doesn't matter. Mr. Donovan is up there, and he asked for you." Her stomach tightened. "Me." Meredith gave her a look. "Yes, you. And unless you plan on getting fired before your first paycheck, I suggest you get moving." Madeline forced herself to her feet, ignoring the way her pulse quickened as she made her way to the rooftop. She didn't even know what she was walking into, but she doubted Liam Donovan had called for her to compliment her excellent customer service skills. The rooftop lounge was nearly empty when she arrived. Soft golden lighting illuminated sleek, modern furniture, and beyond the glass railing, the city sprawled beneath a sky littered with stars. It was breathtaking, but Madeline barely noticed. Liam stood near the edge, his back to her, a tumbler of whiskey in his hand. She hesitated, then cleared her throat. "You asked for me, sir?" He didn't turn around immediately. Instead, he took a slow sip of his drink, as if weighing his words. When he finally faced her, his expression was unreadable. "You handled yourself well today," he said. Madeline blinked. That was not what she had expected. "Thank you." Liam studied her for a long moment, his gaze sharp. "I don't say that lightly. Most people crack under pressure in this hotel. But you didn't." She shifted on her feet, unsure of how to respond. "Was this a test?" "I've dealt with worse," she said finally. A flicker of amusement crossed his face. "I believe that." Silence stretched between them. The city hummed below, cars moving like tiny fireflies through the streets. "You don't seem afraid of me," Liam mused, tilting his head slightly. Madeline raised a brow.
Should I be?
Something dark flickered in his eyes, something almost unreadable. "Most people are." She crossed her arms, standing her ground. "I don't intimidate easily." Liam smirked, but there was no warmth in it. "We'll see." A gust of wind swept across the rooftop, rustling her hair. For a moment, she thought he might say something else, but then he turned back toward the city, dismissing her without another word. Madeline clenched her jaw. She didn't know what that was, but she had the unsettling feeling that she had just been drawn into something far more complicated than she ever anticipated. The days that followed were a blur of long shifts, demanding guests, and an unshakable awareness of Liam Donovan's presence. Though their rooftop conversation had been brief, it left a lingering weight in Madeline's mind. He wasn't just the hotel's powerful owner. He was an enigma, unpredictable and impossible to ignore. She rarely saw him after that night, except for the occasional glimpses when he strode through the lobby, commanding attention without a word. But even in passing, his presence sent a ripple through the hotel. Staff members stiffened, guests instinctively turned their heads, and Madeline, well, she pretended not to care. "Are you sure you're not secretly swooning over the boss?" Olivia teased one afternoon as they reorganized the concierge desk. Madeline scoffed, shoving a stack of brochures into place. "Please, I don't have time to swoon over anyone. let alone a man who acts like emotions are beneath him. Jasmine smirked. I was not staring. Riley snorted. Girl, you so were. Madeline shot them all a glare, but before she could argue further, a sharp voice interrupted them. Carter. Carter. She turned and her stomach twisted at sight of Victoria Hayes. Madeline had never met someone who could look down on people while being the same height as them. But somehow, Victoria managed. Her sleek blonde hair was pulled into a severe bun, and her designer heels clicked against the tile as she approached. You're needed at the penthouse suite, Victoria said, arms crossed. Madeline frowned. I thought penthouse services were handled by... Are you questioning an order? Victoria's voice was laced with challenge. Madeline bit back her irritation. She had no doubt Victoria was enjoying this, whatever this was. The woman had been watching her closely ever since her first week, and while Madeline wasn't entirely sure why, she wasn't naive enough to assume it was anything good. No, ma'am, Madeline said, keeping her tone even. I'll head there now. She felt Olivia nudge her arm in silent warning as she left, but Madeline forced herself to keep walking, shoulders squared. The penthouse suite was breathtaking. An expanse of floor-to-ceiling windows, modern furnishings, and a balcony that overlooked the entire city. But the man standing near the minibar made her forget all of it. Liam, he wasn't in his usual suit. Instead, he wore a crisp white dress shirt with the top 2 buttons undone, sleeves rolled up just enough to reveal strong forearms. He looked less like a ruthless billionaire and more like someone capable of making a woman forget how to breathe. Madeline cleared her throat, forcing herself to focus. You... asked for me, sir? Liam turned, his gaze sweeping over her before he gestured to a silver tray on the bar. The chef sent up a meal. There's a mistake, he said. Madeline blinked, glancing at the untouched plate of food. A mistake? I asked for medium, rare steak. This is medium. Her lips parted, expecting a smirk or some sign that he was joking, but Liam's expression remained unreadable. You called me up here for that? She asked before she could stop herself. His eyes locked onto hers, and for a second, she thought she had overstepped. But then, to her utter disbelief, a ghost of a smile touched his lips. You're the first person who's ever said that to me, he mused. Madeline folded her arms. I find that hard to believe. Liam leaned back against the bar, studying her. Tell me, Carter. Do you... I treat everyone equally, she said. No exceptions. His gaze flickered with something unreadable before he nodded. Good. Silence stretched between them, charged with something she didn't dare name. Finally, Liam exhaled, almost amused. You're dismissed. Madeline didn't need to be told twice. She turned on her heel and walked out, her heart pounding louder than it should have been. As the elevator doors closed behind her, one thought pulsed through her mind. Liam Donovan was dangerous, not because he was powerful, but because he was starting to get under her skin. Madeline should have known things wouldn't stay simple for long. Ever since the night Liam Donovan had summoned her to the penthouse over a steak, the air between them had shifted. She wasn't sure how or why, but something had changed. He wasn't just the elusive billionaire owner of the Donovan Grand anymore. He was becoming something else, someone she noticed, someone who noticed her. And that was dangerous. She tried to ignore it, focusing on work as usual, but it was hard to pretend nothing was different when Liam started showing up more often. Not in obvious ways, but in ways she couldn't ignore. He'd pass through the lobby, eyes flicking toward her, like he was checking to make sure she was still there. If she was handling a difficult guest, She'd sometimes glance up and find him watching from a distance, expression unreadable. And then there were the moments when she'd be moving through the hotel, only to turn a corner and nearly collide with him, always close enough to feel his presence, to catch the subtle scent of his cologne before he brushed past her without a word. Her friends noticed first. "Okay, spill it," Olivia demanded one afternoon as they grabbed coffee on their break. Madeline blinked over her cup. "Spill what?" "Don't play dumb." Jasmine leaned in, eyes narrowed. "The boss. He's looking at you like you're a puzzle he can't quite figure out." "Maybe he just stares at people," Madeline said, trying to sound casual. Riley snorted. "Liam Donovan doesn't just stare at people. He barely acknowledges anyone. But you, he sees you, Mads, and I don't think he likes things he can't control." Madeline shifted uncomfortably. Still, none of that compared to what happened next. It was late, nearly midnight, and she was finishing up her shift when Victoria Hayes cornered her near the employee lounge. "You must think you're clever," Victoria said, arms crossed. Madeline sighed. "I have no idea what you're talking about." Victoria's lips curled into a smirk. "Oh, I think you do. You've caught his attention." Madeline stiffened. "Excuse me." "Liam Donovan," Victoria said, tilting her head. "He doesn't notice women like you. But somehow, you've managed to stay in his orbit longer than most." Anger flared in Madeline's chest. "Women like me?" Victoria smiled, slow and sharp. "Don't take it personally. I'm just saying that whatever little game you're playing, it won't last. Because at the end of the day, you're nothing more than an employee, a replaceable one." Madeline forced herself to stay calm. "I need advice on my career, Victoria." Victoria stepped closer. "Then here's a warning instead. The higher you fly, the harder you fall. And trust me, I'll be there to watch." With that, she walked away, leaving Madeline fuming. She spent the next few hours trying to shake off the conversation. But the truth was, Victoria's words got under her skin. Was she imagining the shift with Liam? Was she really getting too close to something she had no business touching? She was still lost in thought when her shift ended, and she stepped outside into the cool night air. The streets were quieter at this hour, the hum of the city softer. She had just started down the sidewalk when a deep voice stopped her in her tracks. "You shouldn't be out here alone this late." Her breath caught. She turned, finding Liam leaning casually against a sleek black car, hands in his pockets. "You're following me now?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. Liam smirked. "Hardly. I was leaving, and I saw you walking out alone." Madeline folded her arms. "I can take care of myself." "I don't doubt that," he said, stepping closer. "But that doesn't mean you have to." Something about the way he said made her heart stutter. Silence stretched between them, thick and charged. Finally, Liam exhaled, shaking his head like he was frustrated with himself. "Get in. I'll drive you home." Madeline hesitated. She knew accepting meant crossing a line. But looking at him now, this guarded, powerful man offering something that felt dangerously close to concern, she made the choice she knew she shouldn't. She got in, and as the car pulled away from the curb, she realized something with startling clarity. This wasn't just dangerous, it was inevitable. The hum of the car's engine filled the silence between them as Liam drove through the dimly lit streets of Los Angeles. Madeline sat rigid in the passenger seat, fingers curled into her lap, hyper-aware of the man beside her. She had no idea why she had agreed to let him drive her home. But something about the way he had said it, "You don't have to," had made it impossible to refuse. For the first few minutes, neither of them spoke. The tension in the car was thick, charged with something unspoken but undeniable. "You don't trust people easily, do you?" Liam asked, his voice smooth, almost curious. Madeline turned to him, caught off guard. "Excuse me?" He kept his gaze on the road, one hand resting casually on the wheel, the other drumming lightly against the gear shift. "You were tense the moment you got in the car, like you were waiting for me to do something." She scoffed.
Maybe I just don't get into cars with strangers.
His lips curved slightly. "We're hardly strangers, Carter." She swallowed. The way he said her name, low, deliberate, sent a shiver through her. "I don't trust easily," she admitted, glancing out the window at the passing streetlights. "But that's not exactly a bad thing, is it?" Liam was quiet for a moment before he spoke again. "No. It's smart." She frowned, glancing back at him. There was something in his tone. Something knowing. "You don't either," she realized. His grip on the steering wheel tightened just for a second. "No," he admitted. "I don't." The honesty in his voice surprised her. She had expected a deflection, a cool dismissal, but instead, there was something raw in his words. Before she could press further, the car slowed to a stop in front of her apartment building. "Thanks for the ride," she said, unbuckling her seatbelt. Liam didn't respond right away. Instead, he turned to face her, his blue eyes darker in the dim light of the street lamp. "Be careful who you trust here, Madeline." She stiffened. "Is that a warning?" His jaw tightened slightly. "It's advice." She hesitated, then nodded. "Good night, Mr. Donovan." "Good night, Carter." She stepped out of the car, her heart pounding for reasons she didn't want to examine. She told herself she wouldn't look back, but just before she reached the building entrance, she turned. Liam was still there, watching her. And then, as if realizing she had caught him, he shifted the car into gear and drove away. Over the next few weeks, Madeline tried to push that night out of her mind. But Liam seemed to have carved a space in her thoughts whether she wanted him there or not. The moments between them weren't frequent, but when they happened, they lingered. A glance held too long. A passing brush of fingers when exchanging documents. A subtle shift in his expression whenever he found her laughing with Olivia and the others. And then there was Victoria. Madeline knew the woman hated her, but lately, the tension between them sharpened. She could feel Victoria watching her, waiting for a mistake. One evening, as she finished handling a particularly difficult guest complaint, she found Victoria waiting for her near the staff lockers. "Must be nice," Victoria mused. Madeline sighed, already exhausted. "What now?" Victoria smiled, slow and sharp. "Having the CO wrapped around your finger." Madeline's stomach dropped. "I don't know what you're talking about." Victoria's smile widened. "Oh, please." "We all see it. The way he looks at you. The way he keeps you close. You think he actually cares. You're a distraction to him, Carter. And when he's done playing, you'll be nothing." Madeline clenched her jaw. "You don't know anything about me." Victoria leaned in slightly. "I know a no, and when you finally realize the truth, don't say, 'I didn't warn you.'" She turned and walked away, leaving Madeline standing there, her heart pounding. She wanted to believe Victoria was wrong. But a small part of her, the part that had spent her whole life learning not to trust too easily, wasn't so sure. The words lingered long after Victoria had walked away. "You're a distraction to him, and when he's done playing, you'll be nothing." Madeline wanted to brush it off, to tell herself that Victoria was just bitter and looking for ways to get under her skin. But the seed of doubt had already been planted, because no matter how much she wanted to deny it, the truth was that Liam Donovan wasn't just another man. He was powerful, untouchable, and surrounded by people who either feared him or wanted something from him. And she had no idea what he wanted from her. For the next few days, she did her best to keep her head down and focus on work. If she avoided him, maybe the tension, the lingering looks, the stolen moments would fade. But Liam had other plans. It started with the small things. A glance from across the lobby when he thought she wasn't looking. A subtle shift in his expression whenever she spoke to another man. And then, one night, when she was leaving after a long shift, he was waiting for her again. She spotted him leaning against his car, hands in his pockets, his sharp gaze tracking her as she stepped outside. "Are we doing this again?" she asked, stopping a few feet away. Liam smirked, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. "You've been avoiding me." Madeline folded her arms. "I've been working." "That's not what I asked." She let out a slow breath, forcing herself to stand her ground. Something flickered in his expression at the way she said his name, like it wasn't something he heard often enough. "I want to take you to dinner," he said. She blinked. "You what?" "Dinner," he repeated, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Madeline stared at him.
That's not a good idea.
"Why not?" "Because people talk. Because I already have enough problems with Victoria breathing down my neck. Because you and I'm..." She cut herself off, shaking her head. Liam's gaze darkened. "And you're what?" She hesitated, not like the women you usually go for. The air between them shifted. Liam took a step forward.
You think I don't notice you, Madeline?
Her breath hitched. "You think I don't see the way you handle every crisis thrown at you? The way you refuse to break no matter how hard people push." His voice was low, steady. "You think I don't hear the way you laugh when you think no one's listening? That I don't feel it when you're near me?" Madeline's heart pounded against her ribs. This was dangerous. This was so dangerous. "I can't lose my job over this," she whispered. "You won't." She shook her head. "You don't know that." Liam exhaled, dragging a hand through his hair. He looked, frustrated, but not at her, at the situation, at the fact that, for once, something wasn't completely in his control. Finally, he said, "Meet me somewhere else, away from the hotel. No one has to know." Madeline knew she should say no. She should turn around, walk away, and pretend this conversation never happened. But then she thought about the way he looked at her, like she wasn't just another person in his orbit, like she wasn't replaceable. And against every ounce of better judgment she had, she heard herself say, "Okay." A slow, satisfied smile crossed Liam's lips. "Tomorrow night?" Madeline nodded, pulse racing. And as she walked away, she knew she wasn't just playing with fire. She was about to burn. Madeline told herself she wouldn't overthink it. It was just dinner. Just two people having a meal outside of work, away from the glaring eyes of the hotel staff, away from the suffocating presence of Victoria and the ever-present whispers of judgment. And yet, as she stood in front of her small apartment mirror, smoothing down the deep emerald green dress she had chosen, one that hugged her curves just enough to be flattering, without looking like she was trying, she knew she was lying to herself. This wasn't just dinner. This was crossing a line. She could still turn back, send a text, make an excuse. But when she glanced at her phone, there was already a message waiting. "Liam, I'm outside." Her heart flipped. No turning back now. She grabbed her purse, took a steadying breath, and walked outside. Liam was leaning against his sleek black car, dressed in a dark suit without a tie, the top two buttons of his shirt undone. It was the first time she had seen him outside the hotel, away from the carefully crafted presence of the CEO. And somehow, it made him even more dangerous. His sharp blue eyes flicked over her as she approached, slow and assessing. "You look." He hesitated for the briefest second, as if searching for the right word. "Stunning." A warmth spread through her chest, but she pushed it down. He smirked, then gestured toward the car. "Shall we?" The drive was quiet but not uncomfortable. The air between them hummed with something unspoken, something neither of them was willing to acknowledge just yet. The restaurant he took her to was dimly lit, exclusive, the kind of place where people with money dined without worrying about prying eyes. A private table was already waiting for them in the back, away from the main dining area. Madeline sat across from Liam, feeling the weight of his gaze as he studied her. "You're nervous," he observed. She scoffed. "I don't get nervous." His lips twitched. Liar. She rolled her eyes, but the truth was, he was making her nervous. Because this wasn't work. This wasn't a passing exchange in the hotel where professionalism kept them both in check. This was something else entirely. "Why did you ask me to dinner, Liam?" she asked, finally voicing the question that had been circling in her mind all day. Liam leaned back in his chair, fingers tapping against the stem of his wineglass. "Because I wanted to." That's not an answer. His gaze darkened slightly. "Fine. Because I can't stop thinking about you." Madeline's breath caught. Liam didn't look away. "And I don't think you can stop thinking about me either." Silence stretched between them. She could deny it. She should deny it. But the truth was sitting between them, heavy and undeniable. "I don't do complicated," she murmured. "Neither do I," he admitted. She exhaled, shaking her head. "Then maybe this isn't a good idea." "Maybe." His voice was low, steady. "But tell me you don't want this, and I'll let it go." Her pulse pounded. She had never been someone who let herself get caught up in things that didn't make sense. But right now, sitting across from Liam Donovan, feeling the heat of his gaze on her skin, she couldn't bring herself to lie. "I want this," she whispered. A slow, knowing smirk crossed his lips. "Good," he said. And just like that, the line between them disappeared. Madeline knew the second she said "I want this," that there was no turning back. The slow smirk that crossed Liam's lips was both victorious and dangerous, like a man who had just won a game she hadn't realized they were playing. But the moment wasn't about winning. It was about surrender. And she had just surrendered to something she wasn't sure she could control. Dinner passed in a blur of charged glances, lingering touches, and words that danced around everything they weren't saying out loud. Liam wasn't just confident. He was intentional. Every move, every shift in his expression, every way his eyes tracked her reactions felt deliberate, like he was memorizing her. And, damn it, she was memorizing him too. By the time he drove her back to her apartment, the tension between them had thickened to something almost unbearable. Liam pulled up to the curb and put the car in park, but neither of them moved to open the door. Madeline turned to him, her pulse a frantic beat beneath her skin. This was... Liam let out a low chuckle. "Nice." She narrowed her eyes at his amusement.
Why, you wanted me to say life-changing?
His smirk deepened. "Wouldn't hurt." She rolled her eyes but smiled despite herself. The easy banter should have calmed her, but it only made the moment feel more loaded. Because under all the playfulness, something real was there. Liam studied her for a moment, his expression unreadable. "I want to see you again." Madeline hesitated, not because she didn't want to. God, she wanted to, but because she knew exactly what this meant. You're the CEO of the hotel I work at, she reminded him. He nodded. I'm aware. If people find out, they won't, he said smoothly. We'll be careful. Madeline searched his face for any hesitation, but there was none. He was certain of this. But was she? Her logical side screamed at her to walk away, to keep things simple, to not be that girl who let a man pull her into something she couldn't escape. But the rest of her, the part that had spent weeks fighting this pull, resisting the way he made her feel, knew it was already too late. She exhaled slowly. One condition. Liam arched a brow. I'm listening. No lying. No games. If this is going to happen, we keep it honest. Something flickered in his gaze, something unreadable. Then, slowly, he nodded. Madeline reached for the door handle.
Good night, Liam.
Just as she was about to step out, his hand brushed against hers, light, brief, but enough to send a jolt through her skin. Good night, Carter, he murmured. She stepped out of the car, heart hammering, and walked toward her apartment without looking back. But she didn't need to. She felt his eyes on her the entire way. For the next few weeks, they met in secret. Late-night drives, dinners in quiet, out-of-the-way restaurants, walks along the beach where no one would recognize them. Liam Donovan, the untouchable CEO, was suddenly hers in a way no one else had ever seen. And it was intoxicating. But the secrecy came with a cost. At the hotel, they were nothing. Strangers. Passing glances that held too much weight, fleeting moments where their hands almost brushed. The restraint was a game neither of them had played before. And the longer it lasted, the harder it became. And then, the whispers started. Not from Liam. Not from her friends. But from the people who had been watching all along. Victoria. Isabel. And the moment the rumors started spreading, Madeline knew. This was going to explode. The first time Madeline heard the whispers, she brushed them off. It was inevitable, really. The staff at Donovan Grand thrived on gossip, and the moment someone saw Liam look at her for a second too long, speculation had been bound to follow. She had done everything right, kept her distance at work, avoided lingering near him, never gave anyone a reason to see what was really happening between them. But rumors didn't need proof. And, unfortunately for her, some people were waiting for the smallest excuse to tear her down. You've heard, right? Olivia whispered as they walked toward the staff lounge, her voice low but urgent. Madeline glanced at her. Heard what? Jasmine and Riley caught up to them, exchanging uneasy looks. That you and Liam are... Jasmine hesitated, then lowered her voice. Sleeping together. Madeline froze mid-step. What? That's what people are saying, Riley said. That's how you got close to him. That's how you got your job. That's why he's protecting you. The words hit her like a slap. The promotion, the favoritism, the special treatment. She had worked twice as hard as everyone else, had never once asked Liam for anything, but none of that mattered. Because in their eyes, she was just another woman who had gotten ahead by opening her legs. Madeline's stomach twisted with rage. Who started this? She demanded. The three of them hesitated before Olivia finally said it. Victoria. Of course. Of course. Madeline clenched her fists. She should have seen this coming. Victoria had been waiting for the perfect moment to strike, and she had finally found it. Let it blow over, Jasmine said quickly. If you react, it'll only make things worse. Madeline wanted to believe that, but deep down, she knew better. This wasn't going away. And the moment she walked into work the next day, she knew just how bad it had gotten. The stares were immediate. Some of the front desk staff went quiet the second she stepped behind the counter. A few of the housekeepers whispered as they passed, barely hiding their smirks. Even some of the male employees who had never paid attention to her before were suddenly looking at her like she was something to be examined, like she was a joke. Her blood boiled. But she did what she had always done, lifted her chin, ignored the noise, and did her damn job. Until Victoria cornered her. It happened near the service elevator, away from guests, but close enough that Madeline knew Victoria had planned it this way. "You don't look surprised," Victoria mused, leaning against the wall with a smug smile. Madeline exhaled slowly. "Because I know exactly who started it." Victoria laughed, the sound sharp and cruel. "You can't blame me for pointing out the obvious." Madeline stepped forward, voice steady. "I earned my place here. I've worked twice as hard as you ever did. And the fact that you can't stand that says more about you than it does about me." Victoria's expression darkened. "And yet, when you're gone, I'll still be standing." A cold wave of realization crashed over Madeline. Victoria wasn't just spreading rumors. She was going after her job. This wasn't just jealousy. This was a takedown. Madeline opened her mouth, ready to fight back, but before she could, someone else spoke. "Is there a problem here?" The voice sent a shiver down her spine. "Liam. Liam." Victoria's posture stiffened as Liam approached, his expression unreadable. Madeline didn't dare look at him, her entire body tensed. "Just a misunderstanding," Victoria said quickly, her voice smooth. "Nothing to worry about, Mr. Donovan." Liam didn't move. His eyes flicked between them, sharp and calculating. Finally, he turned to Madeline. "Walk with me." Madeline hesitated, then followed as he led her through the hallways, his pace controlled, but his energy lethal. When they reached his office, he shut the door behind them. "Tell me exactly what's happening." She turned to face him, pulse pounding. "You haven't heard?" His jaw ticked. "I've heard plenty. I want your version." She swallowed hard. "They think I slept my way into this job. That's why you protect me. That's why I got promoted. That's why I'm still here." Her voice wavered slightly, but she steadied herself. "That's what they're saying." Liam's expression darkened, something dangerous flashing in his eyes. And then, to her absolute shock, he said, "Then let me fix it." Madeline's breath caught. "How?" He stepped closer. "By making it very clear that you're not just some affair, Madeline. By showing them exactly what you mean to me." Her stomach twisted.
"And what mean to you, Liam?"
For the first time, he hesitated. And in that hesitation, she saw everything. This wasn't just attraction. This wasn't just secrecy and stolen moments. This was so much more. And it terrified her. Before she could respond, his phone rang, breaking the moment. Liam exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. "I have to take this." Madeline nodded, stepping back. "I need to go." He looked like he wanted to stop her, but she didn't wait. Because for the first time since this started, she realized if Liam Donovan wanted to protect her, he had to be willing to choose her. And she wasn't sure if he was ready to do that. Madeline barely made it through the rest of her shift. The moment she stepped out of Liam's office, her mind was a storm of emotions she couldn't control. By making it very clear that you're not just some affair, Madeline. By showing them exactly what you mean to me. What did she mean to him? That was the question that had haunted her from the beginning. Liam Donovan was a man who controlled every part of his life with precision, who let no one in unless it benefited him. She had convinced herself that what they had was just an attraction, a reckless, irresistible pull between two people who shouldn't want each other, but did. But now, she wasn't so sure. She needed space, time to think. So she did what she had always done when things felt too heavy. She went home, curled up in bed, and tried to remind herself who she was before him. The next day, she didn't seek him out. She didn't wait for him to fix things. If Liam truly wanted to, he would have to do it on his own. And he did. It started in the morning. A memo was sent out, official, direct, and carrying the full weight of Liam Donovan's name. Effective immediately, any unprofessional gossip regarding employees will not be tolerated. Any harassment based on false claims or rumors will be subject to termination. The message was clear. But it was what came next that left the hotel staff stunned. Liam walked straight through the lobby during peak hours, ignoring the whispers as he made his way toward her. Madeline barely had time to process what was happening before he stopped in front of her, his piercing blue eyes locked onto hers. The entire staff was watching. And then, without hesitation, Liam reached for her hand. The world slowed. Madeline's breath hitched. And in that moment, he chose. No more secrecy. No more hiding. Just them. She should have pulled away. Should have reminded him that this wasn't how things were done. But instead, she let him lace his fingers with hers. Let him show everyone exactly what she meant to him. And, just like that, the power shifted. Victoria's plan had backfired spectacularly. By trying to expose a secret, she had forced Liam to make a choice. And he had chosen Madeline. Publicly, without apology. Later that night, in the privacy of her apartment, Liam found her again. This time, there were no walls, no barriers, no hesitations. "You really did that," she whispered, still in disbelief. Liam reached for her, his hands settling at her waist, pulling her closer. "I told you I'd fix it." She searched his face, still looking for an answer. "Why?" His grip tightened. "Because I love you, Madeline." Her heart stopped. Liam Donovan had never been reckless. Never spoken without thinking. But those words, they came without hesitation. Tears pricked her eyes. "You!" "I love you," he repeated, voice steady. "And I don't care who knows it." Madeline had spent her whole life protecting herself, keeping people at a distance so she wouldn't get hurt. But this man, the one she had tried so hard to resist, had torn through every defense she had. And for once, she didn't want to fight it. So, she did the only thing she could do. She grabbed his face, pulled him down to her, and kissed him like he was the only thing that had ever mattered. And for the first time in a long, long time, she let herself believe in something real. Something hers. Something forever. Madeline and Liam's journey wasn't just about romance. It was about strength, choices, and self-worth. Madeline didn't let the world define her value. Despite the rumors, the judgment, and the obstacles thrown her way, she refused to be reduced to someone else's narrative. She proved that hard work and resilience matter more than whispers. Liam had power, wealth, and control over everything in his life. Accept his feelings for Madeline. Instead of running from them, he made the conscious decision to stand beside her, to fight for her, and to choose her when it mattered most. Love isn't just about passion, it's about action. Lies, manipulation, and jealousy can only control a situation for so long. Victoria thought she could tear Madeline down, but in the end, truth and integrity prevailed. When you stand firm in who you are, no amount of deceit can break you. Both Madeline and Liam had reasons to walk away. Fear of losing their careers, fear of vulnerability, fear of vulnerability, fear of getting hurt. But real growth and real love happens when you step outside of that fear and take a risk. At its core, this story is about trusting yourself, standing up for what's right, and knowing that real love doesn't ask you to hide. It asks you to be seen. What about you? Have you ever had to make a tough choice in love or life? Let me know where you're watching from. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next one.